Their rivalry was the stuff of NBA legend. But will the story of their friendship be a hit on Broadway?
It ends up being a really fascinating love story.
Meet the team behind the new play, Magic Bird. And an agent who broke the rules has some ideas on how to fix the system.
It's not utopia, and it's not the answer to everything that ails college football, but it certainly would deal with the agent problem.
Plus, a procedure that can actually make pitchers better than new. And an owner who makes no excuses for the big one that got away.
We went after Peyton Manning. We lost. I know why we lost.
Dim those lights. Raise that curtain. Sportfolio starts now. Hello, I'm Rick Horrow, and welcome to Sportfolio, Bloomberg's weekly inside look at the dramatic business of sports. We've got a lineup that's perfect for prime time this week. Some true crime with former sports agent Josh Lux, a medical drama starring the original Tommy John, and Dolphins owner Steve Ross on the mystery of his team's offseason. But let's start with the story of Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. When they faced each other on the court, it was always dramatic, and their personal relationship, especially since Magic's diagnosis of HIV, has been close, complex, and poignant. And that's why producer Tony Ponturo believes that new play Magic Bird will be a smash hit. It opens this week on Broadway. Thank you for being here, Tony. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks for having me.
So you've had a success with Lombardi. Did you think that sports play would make it easier for the next one?
Well, we knew that if that wasn't successful, it would be difficult to do the second play. We were fortunate that Lombardi ran for 8 months. We surprised a few folks that didn't think sports stories on Broadway were the right fit. We saw that people will come to see good storytelling, dramatic theater, and of course, story about very interesting people. So now we're on to show 2 with Magic Bird.
Well, this is interesting people, famous people, living people, Magic and Larry. So it's difficult, Magic's and Larry's handlers, coaches, agents. The NBA, was it hard to get everybody working together in the same place, same way?
Well, surprisingly it wasn't, but we went to David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA, and said we want to do this story. He said, well, if you can bring everybody together, go do it. We then flew out to see Magic Johnson, Fran Kermser, myself, producing partner. He was intrigued. He said, I want to come see Lombardi, which he did, was very impressed. And then we all worked together to get Larry involved, and they've been great from that point on.
Well, there's another partner, obviously, NBA. Equity partner in the deal? If not, then what do they bring to the table?
I call it a marketing business deal. They provide us the trademarks that we can use, the uniforms we can use, and then they help us market the show with NBA TV, NBA.com, and of course there are many NBA fans that we can reach out through an email blast.
Well, now that the story that Magic Bird tells, it's very familiar to sports fans, but to work on stage, it has to be more than a historical reenactment. We went behind the scenes with the 2 young actors who played the title roles. The X factor for success in sports is chemistry, that mysterious ingredient that makes the whole more than the sum of its parts.
I'm finding out who my friends are, LB.
I knew he would die inside because he had lost. And that made me so happy.
But chemistry usually occurs between teammates, not rivals. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird are the exception, which makes Magic Bird exceptionally dramatic.
It ends up being a really fascinating love story, in a way, and it's about how you see these fierce competitors and these fierce warriors deal with their own personal tragedies.
We're all about telling, and showing. But here, we get to sort of tell the story. What was it like? This is what it's like for us, and people get to kind of live through that on the stage.
From their first showdown in college to their battles in the NBA Finals to common ground at the Olympics and in Magic's fight against HIV, these scenes defined a basketball era.
They're going to be linked forever because of the Lakers, Celtics, Indiana State, Michigan State.
What I love about these guys is that it was all about making their team better. They just wanted to win at all costs. It wasn't about like who could score the most points. It wasn't about like who's going to be the showiest. It was about what can we do to make our team better? What can we do to make this story, as best as it can be? What can we do to engage the audience?
Ever since you were in high school, Magic Johnson, I have been following you.
The friendly rivalry sold quite a few Converse sneakers and moved a league into prime time.
We always talk about in rehearsal about this 2-person club. I mean, people our age don't really realize that they sort of resurrected the NBA. I mean, the NBA is such a machine now, but when I was a baby, the games were on tape delay at night. I mean, you had to wake up at 1 in the morning to watch the games. I mean, I think that's unfathomable to kids today. It's such a machine now, and those guys sort of help bring it out of purgatory in television.
A really interesting perspective behind the scenes, but Tony, now tell us how you found these cast members, Kevin Daniels and Tug Coker.
Well, we had open auditions, and obviously we needed people of height. They're both 6'5", but we really had to capture the personalities of both of these two living, athletes with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and they both really captured their personality. It's not an impersonation. It's really bringing that personality, that style, and, of course, believability that they can be these people on the court.
Obviously, no height requirement for executive producer.
No,
cheap
no,
shot.
thank God.
Sorry. Yeah. Interesting. But now, this is a play that has marketing history as well. You talk about the commercial that they shot French Lick, that Converse commercial, and when you think about the perspective that they've had, and you were working at Anheuser-Busch at the time, did Larry and Magic, in essence, really save the NBA?
I think they totally saved the NBA, and as we've been developing this story with the NBA, they have said, do not, pull back. We totally believe that they saved this league back during that 80 period of time. And what people will learn is that NBA playoff games were tape delayed. They were at 12, 1 in the morning. And these two individuals, CBS actually came in and said, we're going to put these games back on prime time, back on Sunday afternoon. And, of course, we all know how media attention brings awareness and sort of celebrity and success.
It is incredible to remember how far the NBA has come since those Larry O'Brien days.
Well, exactly. And the fact that even, the LeBron James and Dwayne Wade's today, and even Michael Jordan, if it wasn't for these two individuals, who knows what the league would be today.
So here's a vicious rumor you got to deal with, that you talked to Stan Kasten, your buddy, and said bid $2.1 billion for the Dodgers and get the deal done for the opening of Magic Bird. Truth?
Well, most people think producers will do anything. I can't take credit for that, other than I do know Stan from my earlier days, and obviously this has brought great attention to Magic and that whole, ownership group, and great, hopefully, success in the future for the Dodgers.
Thank you for joining us on Sportfolio. As they say in the business, break a leg.
Thank you, Rick.
Coming up on Sportfolio, a new book rips the cover off dirty dealings in the world of college football. Author Josh Lux joins us to discuss illegal procedure when we return. Welcome back to Sportfolio. We know there's money in so-called amateur sports. Billions go to the NCAA and its member schools, and a much smaller amount finds its way to the athletes. In his new book, Illegal Procedure, former agent Josh Lux admits that he paid players in violation of NCAA rules and explains how this widespread practice really works. He joins us now from Bloomberg's LA bureau. Hey, Josh, the book's been out for a couple of weeks now. Best phone call, text, tweet, or comment gotten from people in the business?
My goodness. Well, I've gotten some interesting ones from people who aren't even necessarily in the business, who just follow the business closely, people on the periphery. One guy sends me a Facebook message telling me what a piece of garbage I am and the things that he'd like to do to me. And what's so confusing is the very next message is a friend request from the same guy. So I don't know if they want to kill me, if they want to be my friend, but social media is very confusing. Yeah, you got to be a friend, I guess, in order to do what he wants to do to you. But, hey, listen, your picture of the world of agents, it's really the Wild West. It's a low margin, unregulated business. And if it were a widget company, nobody'd get into it. Why are you in it, or were you in it? Yeah, I was passionate about the sport, and quite frankly, started out as a ball boy for the Raiders and fell in love with it. Just wanted to do anything I could to be around college football, pro football. And, sometimes that draw is a little bit too much for you to reject. Yeah, well, you paint the picture of this glamorous business, but it may not be glamorous at all. All these agents, trying to make a profit, all these players forbidden by the NCAA rules from taking dollars, but they take them behind the bleachers or anywhere. And really, it sounds like prohibition, with you being the local bootlegger. Accurate description? I've said it many times before, and as long as you have that environment, you're going to have bootleggers. It is like 1920s prohibition. The NCAA's mission at its inception was to protect student athletes from commercial and professional exploitation. And what I'm presenting here as a picture is that the NCAA member institutions themselves are the multi-billion-dollar exploiter, so to speak.
Well, the exploiter is one thing, but in the context of who exploiter or exploitee are, players, as we said, can get money from boosters or from agents. And could you really make the argument that the agents are preferable because at least they have some kind of long-term interest in the player?
Oh, certainly. Absolutely. And quite frankly, at least the NFL Players Association, they're supposed to be monitoring the activity of agents, which I think they fail at miserably. They're either completely disinterested or totally inept, and I would assume a little bit of both. There are ways that the money can be presented to these players, I think, in an appropriate way. Currently, what I've been talking about is that the NCAA has no oversight over agents. So I'm presenting a proposal here where they could potentially maybe sacrifice a toe to save the leg. Let the agents continue to lend money. It's a practice that's been going on forever. It fills the shortfalls and the gaps that exist between the cost of full attendance and the cost of living for these players. And, let their agents trade out almost the equivalent of subpoena power and let them be monitored by a group that historically has never been able to oversee the activities of this group, the agents.
Well, clearly, you're not all about being loved by everybody. In fact, some would interpret, the book as the ramblings of a disaffected agent. But at the end of your book, you propose a possible solution to the problem regarding a loan program. Tell us what that is.
Well, as I was saying, I think the practice has been going on for a very long time already, and unfortunately, the player who took the money likely moves on to the NFL, a la Reggie Bush, and the players like a Matt Barkley and others are left behind to suffer the sanctions and the consequences. And, other people in this country, a basic right as an American is to get a loan, and I don't quite understand the logic that says that one of these athletes who has a need can't get a loan against his future value. For many of them, their greatest value is during the time that they're playing college football. So I'm presenting this loan program where the NCAA can suddenly have agents register and control that problem somewhat. It avoids the Title IX issue. It's not utopia, and it's not the answer to everything that ails college football, but it certainly would deal with the agent problem like never before.
What's been the response, and do you really believe the NCAA is going to take this seriously?
Well, like I said, there's a groundswell for change, and if nothing else, it's leading to some quality discussion by many people across the blogosphere as well as mainstream media. So hopefully it's going to lead to some change at some point. Clearly it has to, because what you have is a socialist system and a capitalist society, and as long as you have that, it's doomed for failure.
Well, you say it's doomed for failure, but the present system as it now stands, under your interpretation, who's most at risk? And even more importantly, why do we really care?
Well, you should care for a number of reasons. You don't want to see a group of people oppressed, and unfortunately student athletes, which is a term that was created by Walter Byers maybe 35, 40 years ago, the former executive director of the NCAA, to help the member institutions avoid paying taxes and to avoid players being categorized as employees so they can avoid workers' compensation benefits. That's going to fall on taxpayers down the road. And the argument that the shortfall amounts and the money that the players need, they can go ahead and request Pell Grants and submit the paperwork for that. Well, that's nothing more than a form of taxpayer-subsidized welfare. And it just doesn't seem right that a multi-billion-dollar enterprise avoids taxes and then asks the taxpayers to subsidize their non-paid workforce.
Illegal Procedure by Josh Lux. It's in stores now. Hey, Josh, thanks for joining us on Sportfolio. Coming up, it began as a last-ditch experiment to save one pitcher's career. But returning from Tommy John surgery is no longer a long shot. Tommy John won 164 games after undergoing the procedure, but that's not the record. Our Sportfolio stumper this week: can you name the pitcher who won the most Major League games after having Tommy John surgery? Answer when we return. The next 2 weeks on Sportfolio are all about the NFL Draft. First, an encore presentation of our show from the Scouting Combine, then a spotlight on the 2012 Draft with special guests the following week. A little bit of pressure lifted from the Miami Dolphins last week when the LA Dodgers sold for $2.15 billion. Miami owner Steve Ross no longer holds the record for paying the most money for a U.S. sports franchise, but he's still impatient to turn his $1.1 billion investment into a winner. The draft is his next big opportunity.
How do you feel about running a business where player selection, in a lot of ways, is based on luck?
Well, Andrew Luck, if you will.
Right, exactly.
Well, it's luck. I mean, it's really based on your previous season. Yeah. I mean, the NFL was really set up with the parity that it has for all teams to be 8-8, and for that to fluctuate over a period of time. And I think it's, you know, it really rewards good management over the long period of time, because there's very few teams really consistently have been a winner. So it really, based on the whole system that they have, it's a very difficult thing to achieve.
Interesting, because it's a trade-off. You have a lot of fans who will tell you exactly what you should do, whether they know anything about it or not, and yet they're so excited. This is a good time to generate season tickets and excitement about the team. How do you feel about that trade-off?
Well, I mean, you know, one thing I find about the fans, they all have an answer to whatever our problems are. The problem as an owner, you have to really live to the ramifications of how you respond to things. And so you just can't sweep it away and go start all over again. So, I mean, you know, the sophistication of going into the draft and understanding what your team needs and really evaluating the players is key. And I think Jeff Ireland does a great job of that. And, you know, like every other owner, I'm optimistic going into the draft. We have 8 picks. We have needs that we have to fill, or I should say musts that we have to fill. And so, you know, I think we're building something there. We have a young team, and hopefully we put together the right pieces.
There is a perception that Peyton Manning should have come, didn't. There's a perception that the team should have traded for Tim Tebow, didn't. Not asking you to comment on that, but how do you overcome that perception? Is just winning over time?
I mean, winning cures all problems. We went after Peyton Manning. We lost. I know why we lost. It had nothing to do with our team. He looked for a place that he'd be comfortable in the locker room and people that he was familiar with. He's a fine guy, you know. But I mean, we've gone after things and we've lost. But you know, we've gone after some people and have won. Yeah. But you know, people wanted to emphasize the negatives, you know, oftentimes.
I asked Steve Ross how his new head coach Joe Philbin is doing. He told me he's pleasantly surprised at how much fun Philbin seems to be having in the job so far. Here's hoping that this year the fun in Miami lasts beyond the opening kickoff of the regular season. A strong draft, of course, would certainly help. That's it for this edition of Sportfolio. Our thanks to Tony Ponturo, Josh Lux, Steve Ross, and all of our guests. And thanks to you for watching. Visit our webpage at Bloomberg.com for more sports business coverage. I'm Rick Horrow. See you next time. Here's the answer to our stumper. The pitcher who won the most games after Tommy John surgery is David Wells, who earned all 239 of his big league wins after undergoing the procedure. As baseball investments go, pitchers' arms are the equivalent of Ming vases. They're precious, they're fragile, and they depreciate when damaged. But recently, the procedure known as Tommy John surgery has helped many injured pitchers regain their value on the mound, and sometimes even improve it. Bloomberg's Dominic Chu has more.
And on the mound for your Nationals, number 37, Steven Strasburg.
In 2009, Steven Strasburg signed a record $15 million rookie contract to pitch for the Washington Nationals. But before the end of his first 2 months in the majors, he ended up on the disabled list. Strasburg had torn a ligament in his throwing elbow and would require a surgical procedure that's become all too common among major league pitchers. The fix for this potential Hall of Famer? Ulnar collateral ligament reconstruction, also known as Tommy John surgery, named after the man who first received it in 1974. Dr. Louis Yoakum, who works at the Kerlan Jobe Clinic in Los Angeles, is the man Strasburg trusted to fix his multi-million-dollar arm.
It's the idea of taking a tendon from somewhere else and turning it into a ligament.
So basically, I'm taking something from somewhere else in my body, and you're going to stick it in my elbow.
Correct.
It's not uncommon. 1 out of every 9 Major League ball players has required this surgery. And for most, the outcome is positive.
Most of the surgeons in the U.S. that are doing the operation are coming up between 85 and 90% success.
That's a far cry from 1974 when Dr. Frank Jobe first pioneered the surgery on Tommy John.
Well, I tell him he probably has a 1 in 100 chance of success, but if he didn't do it, he didn't have any chance.
Tommy, Dr. Jobe gave you a 1 in 100 shot of emerging from the surgery. What were your thoughts then?
I was valedictorian in my high school class, so I was pretty smart, you know. And I knew 1 in 100 is far, far, far greater than 0 in 100. And I said, let's do it.
Bloomberg Sports crunched the numbers, comparing the earned run average for pitchers who had the surgery in 2009. 2 years prior, in 2007, they averaged an ERA of 4.30, compared to 2 years after in 2011, when the ERA dropped to 4.22. A slight improvement, and they extended their earning potential.
As we talk about what's happening now,
Scott Boras is considered by many to be the most powerful agent in baseball. He's represented a slew of pitchers who've received the surgery, players like Steven Strasburg, Rafael Soriano, and Mike Gonzalez.
When I went back and looked at our 18 or so players that have had Tommy Johns, we probably negotiated in the area of $350 to $400 million worth of contracts with them after they've had Tommy John surgery.
Tommy John surgery isn't just for youngsters like Strasburg. Baseball's oldest pitcher, Jamie Moyer, and former Cy Young contender Adam Wainwright are also returning from the procedure in 2012. At the recent SABR conference on baseball analytics, I asked Los Angeles Dodgers Director of Medical Services Stan Conti if the Strasburg case suggests teams should be leery of risking big money on young power pitchers.
There's no question that the risk of a starting pitcher is higher than any other player on the field. So when you decide to take that high money risk, you have to understand that going in. And then you also have to understand, in, say, the Strasburg situation, what's the recovery rate of his particular injury in a Tommy John? Well, we know a whole lot about Tommy John surgeries and that they're about 85 to 90% successful. So him hurting his elbow may have been the best injury that he could have had in regards to predictability of him coming back on the long term.
Still to come on Sportfolio, it's just 2 weeks until the NFL draft, which means 2 things: hope and hype. How's Dolphins owner Steve Ross handling it? We'll talk to him next. Stay with us. Get Sportfolio wherever you go on the Bloomberg TV Plus app for iPad.